everyone. Thank you all for coming out to our event tonight. My name is Lizzie Simon, and I am the committee head for Forever Red's Alumni Author Committee. I'm so happy to see such a great turnout. I know that things are difficult with the pandemic and everything, but it makes me really happy that we can all get together as an SVSU community and still do this event via Zoom. So as I said, my name is Lizzie, and I'm a second year student here at SVSU. I'm also the lead intern for the Alumni Relations Office, and I'm in our RSO Forever Red. I am a literature and a communication major, so talking to authors is right up my alley. I've always loved books, so I'm super excited for tonight. Forever Red is a student-run organization that hosts events to boost Red Pride and to raise funds for student scholarships. So on behalf of Forever Red, I would like to thank everyone for attending tonight. We have two authors joining us, Jared Morningstar and Azaria Milton. Jared, would you like to start us off by introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name, as Lizzie said, is Jared Morningstar. As far as pronouns, I will go with he and him. And my book titles are American Fries, Poems and Stories. That book came out in the summer of last year as a collection of poetry and short fiction. And then my new collection of poetry and short fiction, American Reality, was published last month, both via Alien Buddha Press. I graduated in 2005 from Saginaw Valley, and my major was English creative writing, and my minor was history. And then shortly afterwards, I went through Saginaw Valley's ACE program to get my secondary teacher certification. I did not have membership really in clubs on campus, but I've done a lot of volunteer work in the community since, running workshops through the volunteering through the Refke House, and also through the Community Writing Center. And so really happy about that. My favorite fictional characters would be Miss Havisham from Great Expectations, long-standing favorite character, but also Tom Joad from Grapes of Wrath. And then if I'm going to put a villain in there, be Iago from Shakespeare's Othello. If I had to pick 5 words to best describe really both books, I would choose America, which I guess that's kind of makes sense, but also social class and politics and culture of many kinds. And then I guess my final word would be reality or realism. It's a pleasure to be with everybody.
Thanks, Jared. Azaria, would you mind telling us a bit about yourself?
Okay, hi, my name is Azaria Milton. The title of my book is Calthenio. This is what the cover looks like. I go by she and her for my pronouns. As far as when I graduated, it was May of 2019. I had a creative writing major with a minor in English. One of the clubs that I participated in, it was actually a Bible study group called Crew, where I met a lot of my friends there while I was on campus. And one of the characters, as far as like fictional characters that I like, is a character named Romiette from a book called Romiette and Julio, which is a modern day like spin-off of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. And how I would describe my book would probably be action, adventurous, fantasy, intense, and thrilling.
Awesome. Thank you guys both for joining us and for everyone else for joining us. So I guess we can get right into the main event. I'll be asking our authors a series of questions about the publishing process and about their experiences writing their books. So I'm gonna get us started. I'm just gonna start by asking Jared first and then Azaria. So Jared, what was the most helpful class that you took at SVSU to help prepare you for your for writing your book?
Wow, I think I'm gonna have to cheat a little bit with this one because I have a couple that really stand out. I would say any literature class I took with Dr. Sullivan, that he really opened the doors for me to look at literature in a new way through symbolism and motifs and themes. And I had never really done that. I mostly had just kind of read for fun up till that point, but that made me appreciate literature in a whole new way. Another class or set of classes would definitely be my creative writing courses. Vince Samarco helped me out a ton, not just become a better writer, but a better reader. And he helped me fall in love with the creative writing process. It's been fantastic. And then also I took an English 400 class with Dr. Kay Harley about style and editing. And that really helped me in a lot of ways in terms of making my work, my writing more economical. And it's really helped me both as a writer and a teacher.
Awesome. Thanks, Jared. Azaria, can you tell us about a helpful class that you took at SVSU?
One of the classes now, because my major was creative writing, I took so many writing classes and English classes. But one that stood out to me was a fiction class. And it was Professor Samarco who taught the class. And he mainly focused on, like for me, which helped me, was how to take criticism well, as far as like how readers and your audience is like the positives and the negatives of what to take in as far as like your story and how you want your story to be built on and how you want to like develop your characters and develop your plot and your storyline. And I think criticism is really helpful as far as like how to make your writing better. So I feel like his class really helped me just taking those notes and to help develop where I am today.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Jared, what was an early experience that you had with writing that led you to want to be an author?
That's a really good question too. I fell in love with writing and this desire to be an author later in life. I did some writing for fun as a little kid. Like I had a notebook and I would write dinosaur stories and stuff like that. But I lost track of that and got more into academics through middle school and high school. It wasn't until college when I really started consider taking writing seriously and creative writing. And like Azaria was talking about, Dr. Samarco, 100% helped me not just fall in love with the creative writing process, but helped me, I think about writing craft more. And I had done a little bit of, thinking about craft with lit classes, but never so much in terms of like trying to produce it myself. So that was definitely an early inspiration. I did get a piece into Cardinal Sins while I was at SVSU right before I graduated. And then beyond that, I think years later, I was a creative writing teacher. I did a lot of work there. Students inspired me to write. They always wondered why I wouldn't write more. But I think that when I started writing again a lot, probably within the last 4 or 5 years, getting those first couple of pieces published really helped my boost my confidence. And I think that that helped motivate me not just to get individual pieces published, poems and short stories, but to start thinking more about collections, which is what I ended up doing. So a late bloomer when it comes to the creative writing process and love for writing books, but I can't imagine my life without it now. It's been a blast.
Awesome. I love that you used to write stories about dinosaurs. I feel like everyone can relate to that inner child in themselves and everything. Azaria, how about yourself? An early experience that led you to wanting to be an author?
For as long as I can remember, I've always been like a bookworm. I love reading books. I love writing. I know when I was younger, my mom, she would take me to the library all the time, and I would be in these summer reading programs. And it was just growing up with all these adventure books and stories I just really, really enjoyed. And I think the first experience that I had with writing for me that led me to publishing, I believe I was a junior in high school. And I was just doing a homework assignment for one of my teachers. And I wrote a poem, and she ended up putting my poem in along with like the other students. And she announced that my poem was published in a book called Celebration of Poets. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. I was just doing this for a homework assignment. And then my senior year of high school, same thing. So I'm like, 2 years in a row, my poem is being published. I'm like, this can be an actual thing. Like, oh, people outside of my friends and family actually like what I write. So as far as that, I think that was really inspiring for me. I'm like, hey, maybe I can expand on that in my writing and to go beyond like, hey, maybe I can actually write more stories. And I feel like that was really, that's what really inspired me.
Oh my gosh, I love that answer so much. My mom's on the call. Hi, Mom. My mom is a librarian too, so I have very similar memories of the summer reading program and everything. So I love that so much. So Jared, what inspired the idea of your books?
Real quick though, I got to tell you, Azaria, I love that answer too. I mean, as a teacher, I love hearing stories like that. That means so much. That's awesome. As far as ideas with my books, I think that as far as like just inspiration, I guess it's just my observations of the world, and I've been inspired by different things. I'm inspired by of books and music and my students and their work. Seeing them write really inspired me to write. Certainly poetry. I never wrote any poetry, serious poetry, and I probably wouldn't have had I not been a teacher. But observations are probably my biggest inspiration. And I've always been an observer. I look at the world around me. My stuff is pretty much grounded in hard realism. I don't do a lot of fantasy genre material or that kind of thing, but I just think the world, and specifically our country, is a fascinating place, and there's plenty to think about, and those thoughts usually end up in my works, and not all of it's happy. A lot of my stuff is pretty dark and grounded in social commentary, but it's I just basically write my feelings, and I think that making statements about the country and the world through art is really important and necessary. And I didn't sit down and say I'm going to write a book about America, let alone two of them, but that it just kind of came out, and so I guess that's really it. And I'm happy with how they turned out, and I'm glad that people like those observations that I write about.
Thanks, Jared. Azaria, what inspired the idea for Calthenial?
I think for me, what really inspired me, now I'm a huge movie buff. Like, I watch movies like all the time. And during the time when I was coming up with the idea and concept of just wanting to write a book in general, I noticed like a lot of productions and companies remaking a lot of movies. Like, there was like a lot of remakes that were coming out back to back to back. And I'm like, we've already heard these stories before. And I'm pretty sure that there are tons of books out there that you can just pick up and create something from that. And so I kind of like took the liberty and the chance to be like, why not my story? So why not include what I want to write as far as like what people haven't read before and haven't experienced yet, instead of so many remakes, because like you can do it like so many times. And so I thought that would be really that's what inspired me, as far as like I see these remakes and I know that there are tons of stories out there, and so like why not have my story be put on the shelf?
Oh my gosh, I love reading. I love books. Obviously, I'm a book nerd. Both of your answers are so just inspiring, and oh my gosh, they make me want to just pick up a pen and write. So I love this. So Jared, when developing characters, have you ever intentionally or unintentionally written some of your personality traits into a character. This might not be super relevant for American Prize depending on what you're thinking, but I know you've written some other short stories before too.
Actually, I mean, it is a pretty relevant question. Certainly with my poetry, I think that a lot of my poetry directly reflect my cares and my interests. It might not be about me, but certainly is about my feelings and my thoughts. And so in that sense, there's a lot of me, obviously me in my poetry. I think that whatever flaws exist in my writing, and then they do, they're honest, and I think that that comes out when folks read my poetry. But even with my stories, it's really funny. I don't think I've ever purposefully put myself in a story. That's never happened. But going back and taking a look at stories I've written, there's a lot of me in there. And it might not be exactly myself, but characters that share my concerns, characters that have shared certain conflicts that I've experienced. There's at least one story in the new book, American Reality. It's really funny looking back at that story. That story goes back 15, 16 years when I was in Dr. Samarco's class. And it's been torn apart and edited so much. But that book really features the way I've looked at it after the edits, a younger version of me, like when I was in my 20s, and then an older version of me who was a little wiser and smarter and giving advice to my 20s self. And so it's almost like that story, at least there are multiple versions of me in a way. So it's kind of weird. I don't think whether writers intentionally put themselves in their work or not, I don't think any writer can really write something where they're not in there somewhere. Even if it's just a care of or a concern or something, even if it's an antagonist, a villain or whatever, there are things that we find villainous. We have different ideas and perspectives about what evil is. And so I think that even in that sense, that's still us. It's just what we don't like. And so, yeah, it's definitely happened.
Interesting. Thank you. Azaria, what about you in developing characters? Have you ever intentionally or unintentionally added a bit of yourself or your personality in there?
Like Jared said, I think it's kind of impossible not to put yourself into some of the characters that you develop. I know it wasn't really intentional, but as I was like, would reread and go through this stuff, I'm like, oh, that's definitely something that I would do. Like there are like some character, like as far as characteristics and the traits and how they would act and how they would talk. I'm like, I've said that out loud, like some of the phrases that I would say like around the house. I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna add that and have the character act this way because sometimes you're in that moment and like you're in that feeling and it's like why not add myself just a little bit, just like I'm not gonna put myself completely into the story, but as far as like just to get the characters a taste. And it's not just one character, it's like throughout. So I'm like, and like what Jared said, as far as like even an antagonist, like, yeah, there are a couple of antagonists in my story. And it's like, sometimes you have those negative thoughts in the back of your mind, like, hey, why not have that antagonist have those thoughts too, and like put it into the those characters. So yeah, I have put them, as far as unintentionally, I have put them in there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you guys. I'm sure all of our creative writing students on the call are really going to appreciate your input on this one, but what is your #1 tip for fixing writer's block?
I have two. The first one is to keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, pay attention to what's around you. It's remarkable how often I have been inspired by the silliest little things. And I never know when it's going to happen. there was just recently one of the pieces in the new book. I saw, I don't even know how I came across it, to be honest, but it was this video of a town hall, and I think it was in Nebraska, and this dude just went off about boneless wings and about how ridiculous boneless wings were. And I laughed because I've laughed about that before, and I got to thinking about how can they be called boneless wings, and it led me into writing this conspiracy theory poem. And it starts funny, and but again, had I not just been paying attention to silly things or little things around me, I never would have come up with that idea. And so I think that you need to start training yourself as a writer to observe, whether it's through your eyes or ears or any of the senses. And those ideas will come. The other thing, as a teacher, I tell my students all the time to not be afraid to write bad stuff. Because I see that when my students start developing, when they start realizing what good writing is, all of a sudden they pressure them, they put that pressure on themselves that I have to write every piece and it's got to be great or I'm going to feel let down. And I think the brain shuts down a little bit. I know mine has. When you lack confidence, I think it creates a writer's block situation. And so I just tell students, like, it doesn't matter. You don't have to write an excellent piece, certainly not with a first draft every single time you sit down to write. You shouldn't be afraid, and save all of those scraps that you think are garbage, because chances are 5-6 years down the road, who knows, you might find even if it's just a line in there that could inspire something. And so even that stuff that you think isn't any good, that doesn't mean it won't be good later. And that's happened to me many times, whether it's an entire piece or just a line from a piece, and I've brought it back and done something else with it. I think it is. You got to be confident. You can't be afraid, and you got to observe. Those are my two biggest pieces of advice for stopping writer's block.
It's very inspiring. The teacher in you just very much came out, and it was good to see. But yeah, I think that's amazing advice, and I'll definitely apply that to all of those long 10-page essays I have to write as a literature major. So I appreciate that. Azaria, what would be your number one tip for curing writer's block?
My number one tip for curing writer's block, and this has helped me personally, it's 3 words, and it's just one thing, and it's act it out. That's what I did as far as with my story, because I feel like because we have so many ideas and concepts that we want to get out on paper, it's just like stuck in our brain. And that has happened to me a number of times. So what I would literally have a full-on stage performance in my bedroom, and like I would record myself, like I would read the paragraph of what happened in the story beforehand, and then I would talk it out. I would walk and pace my room of how I want the characters to move, how I want them to frown, how I want them to cry. I would literally have a whole stage performance just to myself, and I even still have those recordings to this day. I've even, like, recently I heard I was listening to one of my recordings. I'm like, this is embarrassing, but you know what, it makes so much sense in my book. So as far as how that is for me, I would act out my scenes. So like some of the scenes in my story, yes, I have acted them out. I'm like, oh, this is good. And I would write like how I want the character to sound, like how I want them to yell. Do I want them to be quiet in this scene, or to, you know, be frustrated, or to like have a frown, and like how I want them to move. So that's honestly my number one tip, is to just like let it out and to act it out, because concealing it and having it in our minds just stuck there could be kind of overwhelming. So that's the useful tip that I could give.
I have never heard that before. And granted, I'm not an author, but I've never heard that before. I think that is just incredible. That's awesome. Oh man, I love that. Great. So Jared, this is more technical, but what was your schedule like when you were writing your book, and about how long did that take? Or any of your books, because you've written a few.
This is going to be an interesting answer, maybe, because they're two, depending on which of the two books we're talking about, they're very, very different backgrounds. The first book, I sat down and basically just tried to compile a lot of what I had done over several years. Some of the pieces in the first book, American Fries, go back to when I was a student at SVSU, just getting started writing. Now, a lot of those pieces have been edited a lot over the years, and some of them have been through the submission process and been rejected, some accepted. But that process goes over a long period of time. And what was interesting about that book, I guess you could say, is it's sporadic. It's many pieces over a long period of time. And then I just put them together in an order that made sense. And it was great how it turned out, but it was full of happy accidents, I guess I would say, and a lot of sporadic writing. And then the second book was written almost entirely over like 8 months. And I think that part of that was because there was just a lot going on to be inspired by. And also, I think my confidence level was high, and I felt just more inspired to write. And I'm still a sporadic writer, and I don't operate on a schedule. I just have so many things going on. It would be impossible for me to work on a schedule. And my brain, my writing brain especially, just doesn't work that way. But I had more moments, not only where I felt inspired to write, but where I felt confident enough to get those words down. And so the second book was on a wildly different schedule than the first one. And so I guess the way I approach things is just whenever the inspiration hits, whenever that moment feels right, just have, your note app ready on your phone, or a journal ready, or a laptop, or an envelope, or whatever you need, and get it down. And then, you can go back and edit and play with it later. But yeah, it's not organized. It's kind of messy. But that's my writing process, whether it's over 16 years or 8 months.
Thanks, Jared. Azaria, what was your schedule like when you were writing your book, and about approximately how long did it take?
Well, the idea of my book started in 2015, and that was when I was a senior in high school. And because of like work and school, I think it roughly took me like 5 years to completely like finish the book entirely. And that's, because like right after I graduated high school, I had a summer job, and after a summer job, I went straight into college. And so because of that, I didn't really have a lot of downtime, but when I did, I worked as much as I could to like get those thoughts and ideas and concepts, as what Jared was saying, to, just write down those ideas, whether you have a sticky note or like your phone or just a little piece of paper, just to get those ideas down. And over time, that took me a lot. Even when I graduated college, I had a week off and I went straight into work. So it was one of those, it was like back to back to back. So I think time was really what, like, it wasn't a lot that I had, but I did make do. And when I did, I was like, okay, let me get, into this, because I really want to, to finish this story, no matter like how long it took.
Awesome. Yeah. Jared, what was the most challenging part of the publishing journey for you?
This is interesting. First of all, finding the right publisher is always a challenge. The good news is that if you're not overly picky about getting your stuff published by a big name publisher, there are a lot of smaller independent presses out there, like Alien Buddha, who did my books. And the good news is that with in the modern day and in the modern age with the internet, we're all connected. And so with social media or whatever, it's really easy to do research on those presses. So that was a challenge, but I think that the hardest thing for me actually came post signing the contract, and that's just being patient. The last thing you know, and I was more patient with the second book than the first one, is just making sure everything is right. Make sure that everything is put together the way you want to within the book, at least, you know, like my books are, like collections, making sure the order is right, going through, and I did a lot of my own editing. And so that process was tiring, but again, I didn't want to rush through it, because that then all kinds of bad things can, you know, can eventually happen, and then you're not satisfied, because you're excited. You know, you want to get that book out there, and you want to get people to read it, and you want to see pictures of people with your book, or I don't know, at least I do. It's kind of fun. And but you got to be patient. And I think that was the biggest challenge for me, is just trying to avoid the pitfalls of rushing the process, and instead making sure that a quality product emerged in the end.
I can imagine like how it would be so difficult for me to be patient and like just waiting for it all to get out there, because you put your heart and soul into it. I mean, I haven't lived it, but I can empathize with it. Yeah, for sure. Azaria, what was the most challenging part of the publishing journey for you?
To be honest, Jared kind of like took some of the words right out of my mouth. It was like patience, time, even like energy to like get my book published. For instance, as far as like, you have to make sure your dimensions are right of the book. You have to make sure to get your cover together. You have to make sure you want the right font, even the font size and things like that. It does take a lot of time. It takes a lot of patience. I completely went into this blind thinking that, oh, writing a book is easy, it's going to be fun. But no, it is very time consuming. And I also did some editing in the process as well. And other people have helped me edit my book as well. And I think just like the time and the energy is, I feel like what was the most, like, I guess I want to say stressful. I don't want to be negative about it, but yeah, it was stressful, because like what Jared said, you want to get your book out there. You want people to read it, but you also want it to be right. So I completely agree with Jared 100%. I feel like most of that, it was just time and patience for me.
For sure. Jared, what is the most important piece of advice you would give to someone who is starting out in their journey of writing their own book?
Well, I hadn't planned on this, but I want to go back to kind of piggybacks on the question, to go back to a point Azaria made real quick.
Yeah, please do.
If you have friends who are good with editing and know the creative process and are good with grammar, yeah, definitely utilize them. If they're willing to help, it's always great to see or have a new set of eyes take a look at a work, because, you know, and I know that this is not an original idea. It's been said by many a teacher, but peers tend to find errors that you don't in your own work. And you could be great with grammar and that kind of thing. But peers that are willing to look at it, they'll find stuff. And that's always a good thing. But as far as advice that I would give, and again, this goes out to my students too, and they've heard this many times, is that you've got to share. And not just for editing's sake, but share what you've written with people who you know will give you honest feedback. Feedback is so important. And I know that ultimately, yes, we write ourselves and we write what we want and we write something that matters to us. But if you don't write for an audience too, and write something that you know that an audience can latch on to, then it doesn't matter if you've written it for yourself, because if no one else cares, then it kind of limits the effectiveness, I think, of your book. And so this is where the feedback process comes in. And sometimes it doesn't really matter even necessarily if they are super experienced with writing. They could be a novice, but if you trust them to be honest with your book and say, well, what do you think about this? What, you don't have to change, you don't have to take their advice all the time, but to be able to listen and listen to what people say, because you never know where the good ideas are going to come from. Folks might think of something that you had never thought of, give you ideas and see themes under the surface that you hadn't been building. But if you're going through that process, you're like, huh, maybe that does matter. Maybe that is coming out. It happened to me many times in SVSU's creative writing program, where I've restructured entire stories based on feedback that I was given, and whether or symbolism or whatever. Those ideas can be really helpful in strengthening in your work. And I know that it's a vulnerable experience. There's something that's different about writing creatively and then writing papers. Papers, I give those to people all day long and I wouldn't even think about it. It's because I don't know if it's just more technical or what, but with creative pieces, there's a personal thing there. But if you can find people that you can trust that are going to be honest, not mean, but honest, and give you both praise when things are going right, but also give you some ideas on how to make things better. That makes a world of difference. And I think that the more you share your stuff, whether it's one book, like a novel that you're writing, or individual pieces like I tend to do, your work will be better for it. You just got to sometimes put that ego aside and get your stuff out there, because other people, that is your audience too. And I think that if you can take advice to make a piece or longer work that's more pleasing to both to yourself and others, then I think that's one of the biggest pieces of advice I can give. And I do so every single year when I get a new batch of creative writers in my classroom.
Thank you, Jared. Azaria, what would be like the most important piece of advice you would give to someone who's going out to write a book?
I think the best advice that I could give from my experience is to expect to put the work into writing a book. Because some people say, oh, you should write a book. And some people think like that's that's just a regular thing to say. But I'm like, it takes time, it takes effort, it takes, like I said before, it takes patience as well to put your effort and your dream and your passion into action. And to also not get discouraged, because there are plenty of times where I was stressed. There are plenty of times where I would cry at night, be like, is this even worth it? Of all like the time and energy that I put myself into what I'm writing. And it doesn't matter how long it takes you to write a book. It could be 3 months, 3 years, 13 years, it doesn't matter. And I feel like if you see your work through to the end and not stop halfway, I feel like you can just accomplish that goal. And I feel like a lot of people should take that to heart, because there are plenty of times where I thought I was going to quit halfway. I'm like, this isn't even worth it. But then when I saw like the end result, I was like, okay, I have to keep going. So I feel like that's the best advice that I can give, is to just, overcome that obstacle of doubt.
Awesome. Thank you. Great advice from both of you. I really appreciate both of your guys' input on those answers. Jared, what's been your favorite memory of a reader interacting with you since any of your books have been published?
I think that's a good question. I think that there are a couple that stand out for me. One was relatively recently, and it was an individual event. There is a gentleman who is in some writing groups that I'm in on Facebook, and he is an educator as well. It's an older educator from the UP, and he bought both of my books, and he gave me pretty extensive feedback on both books. And one of the things that he said to me that meant a lot was that he grew up in Southwest Michigan, and he had experienced, he said, a lot of the things that I talked about, the America that I talked about in his book. And that meant a lot, because, one of the things I strive for when I write is that honesty, is that realism. I don't want my writing to just be an escape. I want people to be able to relate to what's in my poems and stories. And when he said that, especially since, we're talking about someone that had lived in the Detroit area, a lot of the Rust Belt stuff, like Little Saginaw and Flint and other communities like that too. Former big industrial towns. I that meant something. That meant something. That helped me because I trust his opinion. He's one of those folks, and that made me feel, because I didn't know him very well at that point when he told me that, and that made me feel like I was doing my job the right way. The other thing, as a writer of collections, I really enjoy asking folks, so what's your favorite piece? I'm like, because I have mine. What are yours? And what I really enjoy is it seems like so many of the people who have read my book said, well, I like piece A. That's my favorite. Or I like piece B or C. But it's not like they're all picking the same one. They're finding something that clicks with them. And that's really, even though I would say that the second book is probably a little bit more politically inclined and consistent on like a political and social themes, there's still, I think, something for everybody in the books. And when I had people tell me, different people, all cite a different work as their favorite, that was another thing that helped me feel like I had accomplished something, that, I was painting a broad picture of America in both books and not just one. I didn't put it in a box. It was a broad picture, and everyone had something to relate to or cling on to or enjoy, something that meant to them. So those would be my two answers.
Yeah, I can see why those would be some like very awe-inspiring moments for you after putting all that work in. That sounds all great. Azaria, what about you? What would be your favorite memory of a reader interacting with you after your book was published?
I think my favorite memory when it was published, first of all, as soon as I published it, I was so nervous because when it was like, okay, I wrote this story, are people going to read it? That was the thing. It was like in the back of my mind, like, are people going to pick it up? Are people going to buy it? And I know within like the first couple of weeks, people were like direct messaging me and texting me and calling me saying, oh, I just ordered mine, or oh, I have my book, and sending me pictures of the book. And I'm like, oh, they finally read it. So that was really thrilling and really exciting. I know there was one person in particular, and I haven't even met him personally. I've only met him through like social media and like TikTok and things like that. And he left a review under my book, and he was saying like, oh, the book is so well developed and like the storyline is amazing, and I can't wait for the next installment. And I'm like, next installment? It's so good that you want another book. Want another book. So that, I feel like that is what made me like really happy, like, oh my gosh, I can keep going, like people are actually enjoying and liking my story. So I feel like that experience and that feedback for me is helping me continue on this journey.
Awesome. That sounds so exciting and just so fulfilling. I love that. So everyone, that was actually our last question as far as that long segment kind of goes for tonight. Azaria and Jared, did you guys have any questions for each other, or anything else you wanted to add about things after speaking about all of this for the past 30 minutes? It's okay if you don't. I put you on the spot.
I have something I can say.
Oh.
Azaria, yes. That was awesome. And I know that I have never been your instructor before, but to just listen to talk about your experience getting that book out there and learning about the writing process, but starting in high school and going through the same Samarco classes that I went through, and just listening to the excitement that you have for everything that you've accomplished. I mean, I can relate so much to that, and it makes me just, again, never had you in my class, but that's just awesome. And that comment that you made about doing the work, that is the right attitude. And I think that's inspiring. And I just want to, just for anyone else that's out there listening about or thinking about writing a book, Azaria is not wrong. And I think that answer that you gave about being willing to edit and think and constantly rework, and it's never going to be perfect because you're always your biggest self-critic. But yeah, it was yeah. Thank you for sharing your story with me too, because that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story as well, because some of the stuff that you said, I honestly, like when you said that you had the same classes with Professor Samarco, like my ears kind of perked up. I'm like, oh, you know, so like that was really exciting for me. And even so, like even my senior year, I like my poem got into cardinal sins as well, and so like things like that. So I'm like, oh my gosh, all these memories. So I feel like your experience and like your insight was very fulfilling for me as well, and it was awesome.
Great. Jared, do you want to let everyone know your social media information and where to purchase your book?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know if the chat function is on or not, but I can drop, well, after I'm done saying these things, I can drop them in the chat for folks to write down. But I have a Facebook page, and it's facebook.com/J Morningstar, and Morningstar as well. I mean, it's on the screen, the Zoom screen, but J Morningstar Writer. That's my Facebook. It's all one word, J Morningstar Writer. It's my Facebook page. I'm also on Goodreads, and my author page on Goodreads is goodreads.com/Jared Morningstar. And then I have an Instagram account too. There's a lot of pictures of my kids and my wife and my family and that kind of thing. But occasionally I'll post some writing stuff on there too. I can drop my social media comments in the chat. But also regarding where my books can be purchased, they're both available on Amazon.com. But anyone can email me as well, or message me on Facebook or something like that. And if you do that and you want a personalized signed copy of my books, I'm always ready and happy to make that work as well.
Thank you very much. Azaria, do you want to share your social media information and where readers and where everyone here can go to purchase your book?
So I'm not on Facebook as much, but I do have a Facebook. It's just my name, Azaria Milton. I have an Instagram account. You can just type in same thing. My username is Azaria Von Milton, AZARIAVON. Milton, Milton. That's my Instagram account. And I'm also on TikTok as well. So I'm mainly on Instagram and TikTok. And sometimes, occasionally, I'm on Facebook.
Awesome. I see we got a little chat in the chat, so I'm going to read it for us if you guys want to respond to it at all. But Robin says that Jared's comment about motifs and symbolism from his teacher earlier, I believe Dr. Samarco, reminded me of his class where he slapped the board in lit class and yelled themes, symbols, motifs, which made everyone search for symbols and stories even now. So.
Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me. My book is also on Amazon. I completely forgot. But yes, you can type in my my book title, Calthenial. It's spelled CALTHENIAL. The link is also in my Instagram, like in my bio. So if you click on the link, it'll take you directly to Amazon.
Awesome. Okay, so that is pretty much it. I'm just going to wrap a few other things up. I'm going to throw something in the chat for all of our participants here. This is a Microsoft survey that everyone I encourage to take if you would like to receive your free, beautiful SBSU mug. I think these are adorable. They're red on the inside. Yeah, red pride, let's go, right? So, so if you want this SBSU mug, go ahead and fill out that link in the chat. And by filling that out, you're also going to get entered to win a copy of our author's books here. This is Azaria's, and American Fries, and American Reality. So by filling that out, you'll also get entered into a giveaway for that, and into a giveaway, we just have so many goodies, for one of these 3 Moleskin journals from SBSU, where you can start your own writing. So please fill out that form. Now, we would only want people that were actually here tonight to fill out that form. So, so that form that we have here, be sure to fill that out as soon as possible. It closes at 10 a.m. tomorrow. We just don't want it to getting out to other people that didn't attend, because these mugs are going to be a hot commodity. So be sure to fill that out. Be sure to like open it, copy it, save it right now so that you have it, because it does close at 10 a.m. You can pick up these mugs from the Alumni Relations Office on campus during normal business hours starting this coming Monday. If that doesn't work for you, there's an option on the form, just like let us know and we'll figure out something out. But oh my gosh, words are hard. We will figure something else out. But I have one last question for our authors just to wrap everything up. Jared, what's the main theme that you would want your readers to take away once they finish your book?
This is going to sound like me as a teacher again. I think that if nothing else, I hope that folks who read my books keep their eyes open and look around them. I know that I was talking about that earlier. I think that, there are a lot of voices out there that love to throw out opinions about politics and culture and all these ideas that are coming from multiple sides. And it's really easy, I think, to just listen to what other people are saying and just kind of like take that opinion, take those ideas and kind of make them yours. And I encourage instead, I hope through my writing, because it is honest and because they're from personal observations, that even if you don't write about it, even if you just look at the America around you, I think that if you educate yourself on material that's not opinion-based, but you just take a look at the facts and you take a look at everything around you, you're going to be as a more informed, enlightened citizen. And I think that if more people take a look at the world around them and think about the world around them and what makes sense to them, it's going to do more than just create good readers. But I hope that, I think that, we'd be looking at a better a place to live in as well. And if my books even inspire one person to do that, I will be happy, because it's that awareness that I try to convey through everything I write.
Thank you, Jared. Azaria, what is a theme that you would want readers to take away from your book?
I think I want my readers to take away, this is kind of cliche, but to never give up. And no matter the obstacles that may come your way, you're able to overcome them because you're stronger than you think you are. Sometimes I feel like sometimes we're hesitant because, it's the unknown that we're unfamiliar with. And I feel like that's the takeaway. It's like, because we don't know it, we shouldn't be afraid of it because we're stronger than we think we are. So I feel like it's kind of short and simple and sweet, but I feel like that's pretty much what I want my readers to take away from my story as a whole.
Thanks, Azaria. We did end a couple of minutes early, so if there's any questions from anyone that's been listening that you have for both of our authors, either of our authors, feel free to take yourself off mute and ask, or you can throw it in the chat, up to you.
Lizzie, as someone that is blessed to be worked here for 41 years, and a two-time graduate, Azaria and Jared, you guys rock tonight. And you really tell us why SFSU is a special place and why the message you gave was profound. And I just wanted, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for taking the time out to be true alumni and taking Red Pride to another level. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. I appreciate it.
I want to ditto those comments. This is Ed Milton. I'm Azaria's dad, in class of '85. And this definitely has been inspiring. hearing from Jared and also my daughter. You guys are making SVSU very proud today, and to you as well. Our moderator, Lizzie, I'm pretty sure your parents are proud as well. So congrats. It's good seeing that fellow SVSU people are doing well. And I pray that, during this COVID thing, that everybody that's on this call is safe, and keeping their families safe. And we really appreciate you all and taking that time to share your vision and the things that you've done and are doing today. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a question in the chat, so I'm going to give that a quick read really quick. Scott is asking, what led you to the decision to pursue the course of being independently published over traditional publishing?
Honestly, I think the one thing that was really appealing to me was the creative freedom aspect. I was blessed to have the chance to be really involved in the entire process. Whether we're talking about the book cover, because both book covers are actually photographs that I had taken years ago. But everything from that to I was able to choose the order that my pieces were in the book. They were very much my vision. And my publisher was incredibly supportive in what I wanted to do, even with the first book, when I had barely worked with my publisher at all. I had submitted one story to an anthology that the publisher was putting together, and that's it. But the publisher really trusted me and was willing to let me play around with my vision and put my vision out there. And so I think that's not something that you would really get all the time with big presses. And that's why I definitely prefer the small presses, and that's why I went that way.
For me, like what Jared said, it was just the freedom to have creativity and to be involved more, because that was one of my fears. I'm like, am I going to have that much freedom to do what I want to do and what I envisioned? And I, like what Jared said, I wanted to be a part of the experience all the way. And because I have so many creative ideas, like I want to be involved and not have someone tell me like, I want, X, Y, and Z. Like I didn't want to like be in a box. I just wanted to expand and to be let out. And as far as like with the creative concepts and the book cover ideas, I had the idea and the process, but actually the person that did my cover was actually my older sister. So we got together, and that was, that took a while to come up with like so many processes and concepts and ideas on like how we want. I've seen like some of her sketches. I'm like, oh, maybe this way. Even when I was away at school, I would send her like concept ideas and stuff. And then when I would come back, she would show me, hey, this is what I have. And like we would come together and collaborate and get just the cover alone done. And I feel like those creative experiences for me, I feel like that's why I also went independent.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much. And I appreciate those few audience questions that we did have. Thank you everyone for coming out. Don't forget to fill out that Microsoft form if you would like to receive your SVSU mug and get entered into those giveaways. On behalf of Forever Red and the Alumni Relations Office, just thank you guys all for coming out and supporting this event. I think that all of us here really prove that, once a Cardinal, always a Cardinal. And I think that's just so important. So I appreciate all the Red Pride and everything, everyone just coming out to support. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your week. And if you ever have anything, any other questions, anything you need help with, you can always contact the Alumni Relations Office. We're always here to help.
Lizzie, thank you. You did a heck of a job. Go Cards.
Go Cards.
Go Cardinals. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Good job, Lizzie.
Thank you.